Hello and welcome to part 2 of this series. I just want to quickly recap what we are going to do in this video. We are taking a universe of cryptos and backtest them t-80 days until t-30 days. Then we are picking the top 5 performers and test them t-30 days until today. Alright, please take a look at the video description. There is some knowledge I assume you are familiar with. Important disclaimer, all concepts shown in this video and video series are not an investment advice. Trading strategies working in the past are not necessarily indicative for future returns. Okay, so let's get started. As you see, I already imported some necessary libraries. We need pandas for data handling, SQL Alchemy to connect to our database, which we have built in the previous video. We need to import some stuff from the backtesting library. And also I'm importing time delta that enables me to subtract days from a given date. Next, we are pulling the symbols in the database, just using read SQL here and select name from SQLite schema where type is table and provide our engine defined above here. And this provides us all symbols in the database. Yes, I don't have all symbols yet because I'm currently on another user due to data protection reasons, so your results will differ from my results. Next, I'm going to define the strategy. As I've already covered this strategy in one of my previous videos, I'm just going to copy paste that from my other screen, but we will go through that together. So this is a class inheriting from strategy, which we have imported above here from the backtesting library. And here I'm just setting the short-term simple moving average window and the long-term simple moving average window. So these values are static, right? We are not doing something like optimization or stuff like that. I'm just keeping those values static for this example. In the init method, we are just defining the technical indicators, which is simply the simple moving average imported above here. All right, so this is the short term and this is the long term simple moving average. In the next method, we are defining our strategy. So we are simply checking if we have a crossover, and if we have a crossover, we want to buy. And also set the stop loss at 3% minus the current price, so the price when we bought the asset, or also a target profit. So we are selling the asset. So first of all, we are entering when we have a crossover, and we are selling the asset either when we have made 3% loss or 4% profit. Right? This is our strategy. Next, I'm going to define a function, resample open, high, low, close data. And this is taking a data frame and an interval as an argument. And this function is doing what I explained in the mid of the last video. This is simply aggregating open, high, low, close data, right? So that we can resample, let's say 1 minute interval data to 15-minute interval data. Or also 1 minute to 1 hour interval data, right? So I've explained the syntax in the last video, so I'm just copy pasting here. So you see here, these are the aggregation logics I explained in the previous video. So open first, high max, low minimum, and close last. And we are simply returning the data frame. So we can just pass a data frame through this function and get a resampled data frame on a given interval back. All right. And now we are ready to define our backtest. So I'm simply calling that function bt for backtest, and this backtest is taking an interval as an argument. And now within this function, I'm going to define a list which will be populated with returns. And we are pulling the returns out of a backtest on this strategy here, right? So we are first of all pulling data from the database, and then we are feeding this data into the backtest, so the backtesting library, backtesting.py, and take the strategy here, right? So we are pulling data, so we are simply looping over the symbols name column here, right? To get all symbols which are currently in our database. So for symbol and symbols name. And now I want to pull data t minus 80 days until t minus 30 days, right? So what I showed you in the very beginning. So this is my backtest period, right? And I can do that with an SQL query. So I'm going to define a query here, use an F string and select all from. And now I'm just providing the table name, which is my symbol. I've explained that in the previous video. So I'm just taking the symbol here. So in the very first example, that would just be ripple, right? So this is the symbol and this is also the table name in the database. So I'm going to pull data from the ripple table, and now I'm filtering where the date is smaller than today minus 30 days, right? And with that, I'm only getting data t minus 80 days, because this is the amount of days we were going back at all, until t minus 30 days, right? So I'm going to provide pandas to date time of exactly today, and I'm subtracting 30 days of that, taking time delta and provide 30 days, right? So I recommend to run all those rows here, or all those lines of code outside a function, so that you see what exactly is going on here, right? But for now, we are just pulling data t minus 80 days until t minus 30 days here. So I'm going to create a data frame, use pandas read SQL function and provide the query. Also the engine. And with that, I have a data frame containing t minus 80 until t minus 30 days. And I'm also setting the index of that resulting data frame to the date column. As we want to have datetime values, transforming the index to a datetime index. And after that, I'm resampling the index on the given interval. So if I'm interested in is the strategy effective on the 15-minute interval, I have to resample that data on the 15-minute interval. So I'm simply taking my resample open high low close function, this one here, provide my data frame, and provide the interval which I've passed to this function, or I will pass to this function. And with that, I have everything to run the backtest. So I'm simply taking backtest, take my data frame, provide my SMA cross class. So this is our strategy. You can also test out other strategies, of course. You can also, by the way, you can also take a parameter here with a strategy and test multiple strategies as well, right? So the sky's the limit as always. So we are just giving it 1K bucks and set the commission to 0.0015. This is simply the Binance commission if you are taking BNB as the commission asset, right? So this is a quite realistic value. Also have to set exclusive order to true. Then we are running the backtest and store the output in a variable output here. And then we are appending the return of the backtest to our returns list here. Right, so we are screening the output for return. With that, we are getting the return using this strategy for all symbols in the database. And after that, we are putting those returns in a data frame using pandas data frame function on the returns list. Set the index to the symbols name and then give the column a name. This is simply the return. I'm just calling that red here. And after that, we are just screening for the top 5 performers here, calling that top 5, and apply the n largest function. Take the 5 largest values of the return column. And in the end, I'm returning the top 5, and I'm also returning the interval. You will understand in some seconds why I'm also returning the interval here. In a nutshell, because I'm needing that for the validation period. Anyhow, if we are calling this function on, let's say, the 15-minute interval, we will do it like so. This is taking quite a while, right? Because this is running over all symbols, it's doing a backtest on all symbols on granular data, so you have to be a bit patient. While this is running, we can already move on with the validation function. So with that, just to recap, we are getting the, so don't worry about this, this error message. This is simply just stating that 1K is a too low amount for e.g. Bitcoin or ETH, right? So as you see, now we are getting the returns using this strategy. At least we are getting the top 5 performers using the strategy on the 15-minute time interval. All right. From t-80 until t-30, right? So we want to take those assets now. These are the top 5 performers again, and check using these assets and the same strategy over the next 30 days if it would yield in profitable returns or in positive returns. So I'm going to define another function, validate, which is taking the top 5 and an interval. Now the logic is basically the exact same. So we are starting with a returns list, an empty list, which we will populate. And we are looping over those top 5 here, right? So the top 5, let me show you when we are assigning that. This will take some time again, but we are looping for symbol in top 5 index. So the index of this top 5 is simply are simply the symbols. And now we are using a query again, and we can basically copy paste this query. And the logic is just that we are only taking the dates which are larger than today's date minus 30 days, right? Because with that, we are getting all dates which are t minus 30 days until today. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste that here and just change the direction here. Okay. After that, we are doing the exact same thing as before. So I'm just copy pasting here. Of course, code can be optimized, right? You could do that in a function, what I'm doing here. We actually need all these rows here. Okay, so we are doing the exact same thing as before. We are just running a backtest from t minus 30 until today on the top 5 symbols, right? So I wanted to show you the data frame again. So these are the top symbols. I'm looping over the index of this data frame to loop over those symbols in the validation function here. And then I'm pulling price data t minus 30 until today. Okay, so we got the returns, and then we can define an outcome here using pandas data frame function on the returns. Define the index as top 5 index, and also set the columns to return, so the column's name to return. And we are returning this outcome variable here. All right, so let's see if those top 5 were actually profitable over the last 30 days. So we are calling the validate function on the top 5 here, and the interval, which is 15 minutes. And as you see, this is not profitable, right? So what was a very good idea here from t minus 80 until t minus 30 turns out to be a very bad idea if we would have traded those coins. All right, so let's take a look at that again. So you see those insane returns, and then you see those horrible returns, with the exception of maybe those 2 coins here, right? Let's write a function which is automating those 2 steps here. So simply calling that run for a given interval, and then define the backtest result and the interval here, calling the bt function on the interval. Then define the validation, use validate on the backtest results and the interval. And then I want to return the mean of this column here, right? Because we are assuming that we are buying those coins here equally weighted, right? So we are just simply taking the mean return, which would be negative here. So I don't have to even calculate that, because this is a bad, or this is yielding losses here. So let's run on the 15 minutes again. So this is providing us the same results here, but just provides us the mean of that. And while this is running, we are already continuing doing some, a range of values as a test. So we want to have not only the 15 minutes, but maybe the 30 minutes are profitable, or the 45 minutes are profitable, or the 1 hour is profitable, right? So I'm going to define interval scale here to minutes. So you can also check that for hours, and then simply loop for I in range. Just as an example, you can test out whatever you want. So for I in range, 15 to 60 minutes here with 15-minute steps here. And then I'm simply printing out return for, and take the element of this iteration plus the int scale. And this is providing me the return for that interval. So I'm going to call our run function and provide the interval plus the interval scale here, right? So interval scale is maybe a bad name, but this is simply just if you're taking minute, hours, days, or whatsoever. So if we're executing that, as you see, you're just getting some information. So the return for 15 minutes, so mean return 15 minutes would be this minus 4.8%. So these values are already in percentage. And as you see, this is taking some time, right? Reason behind that is we are always looping over all symbols and find the returns for that given interval. And this is of course quite inefficient. So this is a and optimization potential, just to give you an idea how I would optimize that, by probably not using the backtesting.py library and maybe rather a from scratch approach using vectorization here. But anyhow, let's wait a bit and see if we are getting maybe a profitable interval, because this is basically the goal of this video. But as said, I don't have all symbols stored yet, right? So you will get other results. So for 30 minutes, we are getting a positive return. And for the 45-minute interval, we are even getting a quite high return of 4.9% over 30 days, right? Maybe too good to be true, but the result of this backtest. And also, so don't worry about all those warnings. You can, by the way, turn them off if they annoy you. So for the 1 hour time frame, we are getting 1.5%. All right. And yeah, that's already it for this video. There is quite a lot of interesting things you can check out here. E.g., you could also take a look at optimizing those two parameters, as I did when introducing the backtesting.py library, right? So different coins, maybe different parameters, right? So short-term simple moving average and long-term moving average, right? This would be quite interesting and also challenging to code here, right? Because then you would need to pass the optimized parameters to the validation function. Also, maybe you can play a bit around with a stop loss and target profit. And as said before, you can also test out other strategies. Also, the efficiency of this can be improved. But yeah, I think for now, this is a very interesting thing to check out. So play a bit around with that. And yeah, let me know what you think about this. And the most interesting question, if I would take this as an input, so let's say I'm getting, hey, the strategy was profitable for these pairs. Will it be profitable over the next week if I'm letting a bot trade that for me? Also an interesting question. So yeah, enough talking. I hope this was informative, helpful, and yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you would be interested in, and thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you in the upcoming videos. Bye bye.